Love you plenty. Good morning, Mr. Aids.
Good morning. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Just want to say one or two, well, what I consider to be very important issues.
Sure.
As the last caller raised the issue of Chambers being chosen from the three deputies as the new Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago in 1981 when Eric Williams died. They contended, the supporters of the other two deputies contended that Chambers was the most junior of the three. Right. Now, that may have been true in terms of how long he was in the party and how long he was deputy, how long he was one of the deputy political leaders. But that is not the real issue, you know. It had nothing to do with junior status and seniority status. It had to do with the simple fact that Chambers was chosen because of the three, Mahabia, Kamala Mohammed, and Chambers. Chambers was the least tainted of the three. There was never any allegation of corruption associated with George Chambers. And that is why, when the time came to choose a new leader of the PNM and a new Prime Minister, Ellis Clark, after consulting with the hierarchy of the PNM, decided that Chambers was the best man to be chosen as the new Prime Minister. Because for those who have a sense of recollection, if we go back in time, Errol Mahabir and Kamala Lynn Mohammed had always been associated with corrupt behavior within the bowels of the PNM. Everybody of a certain age group would know that. That is the real reason. Chambers was untainted. He was never associated with feathering his nest and filling up his pockets and thieving. That is the reason why Chambers was chosen. That is the real reason. It had nothing to do with being the least experienced or anything like that. Chambers never had any nastiness against his name. No questions about his propriety, about corrupt behavior. Never. And that is why he was chosen by Ellis Clark. Secondly, I just want to say one thing about Justice Prasad. It is important for us to note and to be aware of the fact that if questions have been raised over a period of time about some issues surrounding your performance or behavior as a judge, it is not the ordinary man out here who would have raised those issues about some of the things that happened in your court. The document is there, the information is there, it's well documented that at the level of a higher court, the appeal court, the issue was raised that in the course of your judgment, you indulge in the term that they described as judicial activism, Justice Prasad, meaning, in simple language, that in delivering your judgments, you go out of the realm, outside of the realm of the case before you, and you insert statements and information which have nothing to do with the matter before you. You are on a frolic of your own. And that is why, at least on one occasion, the appeal court stated that they are very disturbed at the fact that you indulge in what they described as judicial activism. And that is why Justice Prasad, and the record is there to show, on too many occasions, your judgments have been overturned in the appeal court. It's not by accident. It's not we saying that out here. The record will show that concerns have always been raised at the level of the higher court, the appeal court. And while on that, let me also remind the people of this country that some time ago he applied for promotion to the appeal court. The request was turned down by the Judicial and Legal Service Commission. Right? And I read in the papers, this is not from the top of my head, I read in the papers, yes, people said, complained about being overlooked for the position. And he wrote to the Judicial and Legal Service Commission to get a copy of the score sheet, how they rated him, and why he did not qualify for promotion. I also read in the papers where he even thought of going to court to force the JLSC to reveal the information as to why he was overlooked for promotion. Well, he didn't pursue it, so that died a natural death. But it all ties in with the fact that, you know, at the level of the higher court, there are concerns about some of his judgments because it deals with matters which have nothing to do with the case before him. You see? And finally, I read in the papers where Monilal said that Dr. Rowley's called for an apology about what happened in early 2015, about the allegations of his father having raped his mother, and that's how Dr. Rowley came to be, and so on and so on. Now, Monilal, I agree with you in one instance. In one instance, you said, and you were correct, that the Cesar did not say that Dr. Rowley's father raped his mother, and that he, Dr. Rowley, was a rapist. But, and it was said by Vanilla Allen Toppin, who was a member of your cabinet, Mrs. Vicessa, and you were not in the parliament that day, but the press caught up with you later on, and you said, they asked you, did you know what was going to be raised in the parliament that day? And she said, yes. She said, yes. It was discussed at the cabinet level. So it means, former Prime Minister, that you were aware of what Vanilla Allen Toppin was going to do later that day. You knew what was going to happen. You knew what she was going to talk about in the parliament. So as people always say, because you knew about it, it means that you condoned it. It means that you were party to the crime that took place in the parliament that day. And you approved of it. So we go back to the old saying, the upholder is worse than the thief. Because you knew what was going to happen and you supported it. You approved of it. You condoned it. So you are just as guilty, madam. And that is the answer for Rudal Monilal. And finally, Ms. Monilal. You are not Dr. Monilal for me, eh? You are just Monilal or Mr. Monilal. Right? Since you say that the matter, that thing came up years ago and it was dealt with, it was never dealt with. What happened in the parliament was never dealt with. Your party never apologized for it. Your leader never apologized for approving what Vanilla Allen Toppin did in the parliament. But I will leave you with one thing. Your party was in government then. Dr. Rowley was leader of the opposition PNM at that time. At that time. And you put the shoe on the other foot. Suppose now, right now, as we speak, Mr. Monilal, a PNM and PNM is in power. They in government, and you are in the opposition. Suppose some PNM MP gets up in the parliament, asks for special leave, and starts to talk about your domestic situation. Suppose a PNM MP did what Vanilla Allen Toppin did, and stands up in the parliament and says, listen carefully, Mr. Monilal, the same thing that was said to Dr. Rowley in his presence. Suppose a PNM MP stands up and says that your father, Mr. Monilal, your father raped your mother, and that is how you came to be. And that as a consequence of that nasty raping incident, that you too were inclined towards the rape. How would you have felt? How would you have felt? But I'll tell you one thing that would surely have happened if a PNM MP had done that. This Speaker of the Parliament, I'm sure, would have stopped it immediately. Would have stopped it immediately and sanctioned that PNM person, MP, and told that person that is not allowed in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. But your then Speaker, Wade Mark, allowed that nastiness and that atrocity to take place in the Parliament over which he presided. That is Wade Mark. That is the Wade Mark for you. So, Mr. Munila, chew on that. Just think that any PNM MP stands up and says, your father raped your mother, and that is how you came into this world. Think about it, and then people of Trinidad and Tobago, think of the very few things that I have shared with you this morning. Thank you, Ms. Rubin.